Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meetings of the, or I should say good afternoon, and welcome to this week's meeting of the Rotary Club of Toledo, Club number 44, organized in 1912. We are broadcasting live today from the newly renovated Glass City Center in the heart of beautiful downtown Toledo, the new home of Toledo Rotary. My name is Matthew, and I will be your host today. If you experience any issues with today's broadcast, please send me a private message through the Zoom platform. Have you missed a Monday meeting and would like to hear what our guest speaker had to say, or perhaps you attended and want to watch the replay? I will be posting a link to our YouTube page where you can watch the video. Once it's been posted, usually takes about 2 days. While I wait, President Cindy, I will say that today's speaker is Larry Dean Thompson. He was incarcerated on 4 occasions for a total of 28 years. He tried and failed 3 times to reintegrate during an era where the challenges that ex-felons face upon reentry were not clearly understood. We're going to hear today a little bit about his life and story, and some revelation into the root causes of incarceration, and his life serves as a survival guide to those who are preparing to reintegrate into society as free men and women. I would also like to point out that next Monday, we have no meeting due to the Easter holiday. There is no meeting on Monday. Once again, we are awaiting President Cindy. So give us just a few minutes here.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests, and welcome to the Rotary Club of Toledo, our meeting here at the Glass City Center. Thank you all for joining us on this beautiful day. There might have been some other opportunities you could have had, but and we're really glad to have you here. Now would be a great time to check into your social media and just be sure that your ringer is turned off. If you would like to take a video during our presentation today and share it, that would be great. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask Allie Leffler to come to the podium to deliver our reflection and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good morning. This morning, I'd like to share a reflection that was prompted by the YWCA Milestone Awards last week. If any of you attended, you know how inspirational it was to see the women standing there, many of whom had had many different types of challenges. And it made me so proud to be a Toledoan. As I was sitting there at the luncheon, I was reminded of a speech from President Roosevelt. Many of you likely know it, the man, or perhaps the woman in the arena. I'd like to share a quote today. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows, in the end, the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring so greatly. Thank you. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Allie. I'd like to thank Max Reddish with Danbury Realty for being this month's meeting sponsor. Thank you, Max. Does anyone have any guests with them? And if they do, if you could please go to the floor mic and introduce them.
President Cindy, I would like to introduce my guest, Mike Deach, and he's wearing two hats at the Toledo Museum of Art. He is the Emilia Bippus Manager and Director of Learning and Instruction, or i.e. Education, and also now the Interim Director of Development. So he's very busy, but also hopes to be a new member of Rotary soon.
Thank you.
Whoops.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you.
President Cindy, I have with me today Joy Goodner. She is a global people leader, and I'm glad she's here.
Hello, President Cindy and fellow Rotarians. It's my honor to introduce my guest, Sandra Irvine, who is a former syndicated radio host, a recovering corporate executive, now is co-creator and executive director of the Opportunity Kitchen, and also part of the Catholic Charities Foundation.
Welcome.
Hey everyone, I'm Ben Soroka. I'm Judge Zuhairi's clerk, and I am proud to call Larry a close friend of mine.
I'm Mike Henry. I'm Larry's technology advisor and also a good friend.
I'm Mark Hannes. I'm Larry's publisher and a 4L law student with 2 weeks to go. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Clint Longnecker, and I am a privileged friend of Larry. We just had dinner at our house yesterday, so it's good to see you again. And I love his haircut. We share the same barber.
Good afternoon, President Cindy. My pleasure to introduce Zach Phillip and Evan Bernath. Both these gentlemen are involved in Prometic Innovations and run Tech Fund 3, regional venture capital fund.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, President Cindy. It's my pleasure to introduce Chris Ferguson. Chris is the newest member of our team at DMC. Most importantly, Chris is a husband and a father of 3 little girls. And he's also a veteran of an Army veteran, having served in Iraq.
Welcome.
President Cindy, I have a family guest, I guess. I found out many years ago that her family and my family were friends growing up, my uncle and her uncle. This is Candace Free. She's an executive with WTOL Channel 11 today.
Welcome.
President Cindy, I'm pleased to introduce Rachel Cameron, who's my guest today, and she oversees marketing and patron services at the opera, and she's a soprano.
Welcome.
Save the best for last. Good afternoon, President Cindy. I'd like to introduce Negarina Cooper, who is a corporate development officer with the Art Museum.
Welcome. So wonderful to see you all here today, and we hope we get to see you again. Thank you for joining us. At this time, I'd like to ask Roy Cherry to go to the floor mic to give us an introduction on the Disability Services Committee and an upcoming event.
Thank you, President Cindy. I'm Roy Cherry, the chair of the Disability Services Committee, and I wanted to let everybody know that on April 25th, we will be holding another camp day at Camp Miaconda. So it's a great opportunity to volunteer and get paired up with some of the students from Glendale Fieldbach, a school for children with developmental disabilities. I want to thank Ed Caldwell for helping organize this at Camp Miaconda. We got a lot of great activities that are going to happen during that day. And also Joe Sweeney for, again, having the St. Francis boys come out and volunteer. I know they had a great time last year, really paired up with a lot of the students from Glendale Fieldbach and developed some great connections. And so it's a great opportunity. It'll be in the morning at Camp Miaconda. If you do volunteer, I think you can sign up. I think it's in the Spoke and on the website, I believe. and usually arrive there between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. The students show up around 9:30, 9:40. And it goes to lunch, and we're pretty much wrapped up around 1 o'clock. So April 25th for Camp Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. If you haven't participated in this event, it's a new one. First time was last year and it was perfect. The weather was perfect. All of the activities and interactions were great. So if you are able to sneak away, please do. Max Reddish, if you could go to the floor mic and give us an update on Community Services Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. Hey, everybody. I'm just here to update about the Red Cross's Sound the Alarm event. Community Service Committee is organizing for the spring. For those unfamiliar with the event, this is where we go door to door requesting to install smoke alarms for free in a to be decided community. It's an opportunity to meet face to face with the communities that we like to get involved with, actually being invited into their homes, do a physical service for them that could benefit their lives in the future for sure. It sounds like after speaking with the executive director of this Northwest Ohio Red Cross, any May or June weekend is going to work out. For anybody who has not seen the email and survey we put out a couple of weeks ago, we put a sign up sheet at the badge table on the way out if you have any interest in participating in the event. In a couple of days, we'll see what weekend might work for the most people and start scheduling. If you have any questions about the event, first of all, contact anybody on the Community Services Committee, but also check out the Toledo Fire and Rescue Instagram page. Just a few days ago, they did a very similar event with the Red Cross, and you can see all the pole carts that we carry the smoke alarms in, and the 4-foot step ladder that we use, and the drills, and you'll get pretty good insight on the actual process. If you have any questions, let us know. Thanks.
Thank you, Max. I'm happy to say that we have a few new members that have reached their 6-month anniversary. I'm not sure if they're in the room, but I'm going to call their names off. Whitney Keeler, Brad Mish, and Brooke Schlageter. If you can come up to the podium. Oops. Come on up, Whitney. Should I say, come on down? Congratulations, Whitney. I'd also like to take a minute to recognize a few individuals for their longtime service with the Toledo Rotary Club. With 20+ years, we have Lisa McDuffie and Judge Sahari. With 30 years, Barton Wagenman and Mark Stevens. And with 40+ years, Thomas Volk and Stephen Dunbar. So let's give them a round of applause. And as Allie mentioned in her reflection, some of us did attend the YWCA Milestones Award event, and we had a couple of our very own Rotarians that participated in that and were recognized. So I'd like to congratulate fellow Rotarians Lori Hauser and Kendra Smith on their recognition at the YWCA Milestones event as Women on the Rise. Their dedication to service and leadership is inspiring to all of us, and I'd like to thank them for all that they do for our community. And without any further ado, I'd like to invite Judge Sahari over to the podium to introduce our speaker, Larry Thompson.
Good afternoon. I was introduced to Larry some 10 years ago when my cousin Billy called me and asked, Jack, I want you to meet Larry if you have the time. I think you can help him. He is working on reentry, and I know you have an interest in that as well. Call Joe. He will tell you more. So I called Joe. Joe told me a bit about Larry, that he had been working with Larry through a Christian prison ministry program, and that Larry, still in prison, had written a reentry workbook that he was using to teach inmates. I was very interested. I drove with Joe to the Marion Prison. You can see it off US 23 heading toward Columbus, where Larry handed me his book and asked for my suggestions after we had talked for a while. No surprise to my law clerks, I remarked, it's too long, shorten it, get rid of the unnecessary verbiage. I left amazed at what Larry was doing behind the prison walls that some of us were doing on the outside. On the inside cover of my copy of the book that he gave me that day, Larry wrote, quote, "You have a heart for restoring the fallen to a life of purpose and meaning in their communities." And he dated it, February 2013. And here we are 10 years later, and he's speaking to the Toledo Rotary Club. I am most amazed at Larry's attitude, his determination, his spirit that never seems to wane despite several failed efforts to obtain an early release from prison, where he served a sentence of some 28 years. Imagine how the world has changed in that amount of time. I thought about how others might have acted in Larry's situation, and the movie Shawshank came to mind. Certainly, Larry could have run the prison library or done the warden's taxes like Andy Dufresne did. Perhaps he could have adopted Morgan Freeman's character, Red, and been the general store for the inmate purchases. But it was not money that Larry wanted, and he probably figured that what he was doing was less likely to get him in the crosshairs of someone like Captain Hadley, who could serve punishment for misbehavior. No, Larry planned his exit not with the help of a life-size poster of Rita Hayworth, but rather by resolving to help others. And to say that he has more than made up for his crime of theft is an understatement. And while he did not end up on Guantanamo, that beach in Mexico, which, by the way, I'm told means hope, we are pleased that he ended up here in Toledo, where he continues to help inmates who, like him, with his help, and I should let you know, he's working now with the ODRC, and the intention is to have him work with all the prisons in Ohio to teach his course and to help those who can walk out one day with hope and succeed. My great pleasure to introduce you to Larry.
Good afternoon. My name is Larry Thompson, and I have done 28 and a half years in 12 prisons, over 4 different prison numbers in Ohio. My last journey was 16 years, and I was released last April 8th. Guess I should turn on this thing, huh? So let's see if this is working. Okay. So I was, first thing I want to say is this. Thank God for prisons. They are a necessary evil. Prisons represent a secondary safety mechanism, a form of outer controls for those who lack the inner controls of self-control, self-discipline, morals, and boundaries. I was one of those people. If I had to describe what incarceration was most like, I would say the most important thing to say about it, it was 100 forms of civil death. Much of how we identify ourselves is in relationship to the external world. Our personal environment is intimately tied to our identity and how we define ourselves. Incarceration was the loss of everything I identified as my family, my friends, my home, my car, my clothes, my stuff, my dog, my neighborhood, and much, much more. The cost of that is you never overcome those civil deaths your entire sentence. You grieve them the entire time. The only thing that I kept for those 16 years in this last number was my last name and the prison number they gave me. All else was supplied by the state and was subject to be taken away at any given moment. Everything that I identified myself in relationship to the outer world was completely swept away. I think that's the best way I could describe it to you. Incarceration could be best described as a life of total uncertainty. You never had any control at any given moment of what might happen over your personal environment. Incarceration could be described as the loss of autonomy. You wear the same clothes, you wear the same shoes, you share the same space, you basically own all the same property. But rather than blending in together, the paradox is that people become more distinct, like stepping on a tube of toothpaste. When under pressure, what's on the inside gets squeezed out, and people reveal who they truly are in those type of environments. And so that was important for me to understand that the most important question I could ask myself, or anyone can ask themselves when they are incarcerated, is who do I want to be in this circumstance? And the key to focusing on what's available instead of what's missing. It's so easy to focus on what's missing because everything's missing. But you see, there is something available in the environment of incarceration, and that is the potential to redefine yourself and your character. And so that's what I did. I entered every possible program I could enter. I took victims awareness, anger management, and everything else they had. And when I had completed that, I went to college and got a degree in psychology and neuroscience. I got a certification by the state in addiction counseling. And then I spent 4 years in seminary while incarcerated. After that, I wrote 2 books, the first of which I taught for 8 years while incarcerated. And it spread to 9 prisons during that time, helping hundreds and hundreds of men change their lives. It was during that formulation of the first book that I did meet Judge O'Hari. Someone that was helping me get the manuscript in book form took a copy of one of the chapters and took it to him and said, "What do you think of this information? Is it accurate?" And Judge O'Hari was impressed enough to come down to that prison and meet me personally. And it was then we began a 9-year partnership in making this program a success and helping other people successfully reintegrate back into society. Judge O'Hari came down a second time when I was in a minimum security camp at one of the graduations I had for the men there. It was a double room, almost this size, packed with people that were graduating from the program who were coming up to the podium with tears in their eyes and say how this program helped them to change their lives. So shortly after that, Judge O'Hari formulated a legal team and tried to get me a judicial release and wrote a letter of support, and it was denied within 30 days. And I think the reason he still brings it up is because he was more discouraged than I was. I simply walked outside, looked up and said, "God, if this is where you want me to stay and continue helping the men I'm helping, then that's what I'll do." There was a huge change in my attitude because I was no longer a chained man. I was a changed man. And that was significant for me. Even in that environment, I wasn't a chained man anymore. I was a changed man. And I knew I was guilty of the crimes that I committed that put me there. So I accepted that. But one of the most important things I learned to understand during that time was when you're truly ready to be released from prison, the most important thing is no longer when you get out, but who you are when you get out. And that's the way I looked at it. I learned how to define genuine courage. Whenever I get up and speak, it's hard sometimes to hold back the emotions because that's half my life. But I learned how to define genuine courage when I was incarcerated, and that was the choice to change, and that means fighting the right battles and the right wars. And for the incarcerated, they all exist within us rather than around us. It's so easy to fight the wrong battles because every day something's missing. So you fight the system, you fight your case, you fight the staff, you fight the rules, you fight each other. And then you find something else to fight. All you need is a right amount of fear and you'll fight any battle. But genuine courage emerges when you address the issues that brought you to that place. And that's, you see, paying your debt to society, too many of the incarcerated do not understand. And it's one of the things I teach is paying your debt to society is not being behind the razor wire, sitting on a prison bunk. Paying your debt to society is addressing the issues that brought you there so that when you return to society, you support the harmony, order, and stability of that society rather than threaten it. And that's what's very important. So that's when I started no longer focusing on what was wrong with the system. You know, I often told people, I said, you know, what's going on in here was gone on long before you ever got here. And it's going to go on long after you're gone, and you can't fix what's wrong with it. Could it get better? Yeah. But the thing is, we missed the chance and the opportunity to address what was really important, and that is the need to change. If I was to describe my return to society, I would say it represented overwhelming extreme culture shock. I was probably the most prepared person who ever walked out of prison due to my education and the 2 books I wrote on reintegration. And I was fortunate enough by the people that love me today to be probably the most helped person who ever walked out of prison. But it's still changing worlds after almost 2 decades was absolute overwhelming culture shock. I got my degrees and I wrote my 2 books on electric typewriter. I had no idea how to navigate modern software in a cell phone and a computer. I remember going to Taco Bell one afternoon to order lunch, and I walked in there and they had a computer-oriented system to order the food, and you used a debit card. I looked at that machine and I didn't have a clue what to do. I almost turned around and walked out. But I mustered up the courage to go up to the counter and ask the young lady to assist me, and she graciously did. And but it was overwhelming for me to think that I didn't even have the skills to walk in a fast food restaurant and order my lunch. So everybody coming back from prison, I think it's important to understand that they will have a pain file, and I try to prepare them for that. I had mine, and those coming out behind me will have theirs. The pain of inexperience, the pain of financial insecurity, the pain of loneliness, the pain of being the new guy, the pain of constant struggle, the pain of constant transition, and many more. But I was familiar with pain, very familiar with it. And so for me, these were just temporary setbacks for permanent change. My first stay was at the VOA in Toledo. And while it was a very clean facility, it was a total lockdown facility, and I could only get out about 4 hours a week. And it took a lot of paperwork to do that. So I voluntarily left there and I went to the Cherry Street Mission, which operated on the opposite policy, where you had to leave by 7 a.m. and could not come back till 6 p.m. But at least I was able to get out and learn my way around Toledo. I was able to obtain a Social Security card, birth certificate, state ID, and look for a job. I was grateful to be at the Cherry Street Mission. I was fed well. I had a place to lay my head at night, and I was grateful for that. For the most part, I was treated very well. There's some wonderful people there. When I first walked in the door, one of the directors, Tom, put his arms around me and said, "Hey, I love you, buddy, and you're going to be all right here." He had no idea what that meant to me, from leaving prison to the VOA. Now I'm leaving the VOA and I'm going to Cherry Street Mission. It was overwhelming. You know, I remember the first time I walked down the street from the VOA downtown to see my parole officer. I was scared to death to walk down the street. I had never been out on the sidewalk in 16 years, and I felt everybody was looking at me. I was uncomfortable. And it's amazing how far I've come in 1 year that I can stand up here in front of you people and share my life with you, which is still a little overwhelming. But the VOA, the Cherry Street Mission, I slept with bed bugs, and I had to spray a mask with Febreze to sleep around those who refused to shower at night. But the most important thing to me was there wasn't any challenge I was not willing to face. And I was going to prove by my actions I was committed to the life I said I wanted. These are temporary setbacks for permanent change. I had to rebuild every area of my life, and that's what reintegration is. And that's why I decided to write a book. I was originally asked, hey, you've been incarcerated 4 times and you've got a lot of education. Can you write a brochure and maybe 10 bullet points and a couple paragraphs? I went back to my cell and I sat down and I said, that's not going to do nothing. That's not going to help anybody. We don't need bullet points. We don't need paragraphs. We don't need quotes of inspiration. And by the way, that quote you said at the beginning by Theodore Roosevelt is in my book, because that quote applies to those men very directly. And so rebuilding every area of my life, including a bicycle. I had no means of transportation, and no money. So I walked over to a bicycle shop a couple blocks away from Cherry Street Mission. And I asked them what labor I could do to build a bicycle. And they said, build children's bikes for a couple of days with us, and we'll give you the tools and the parts to build your own bicycle. So that's what I did. And then I landed a job over in Northwood while at the Cherry Street Mission. And I rode that bicycle 6.2 miles over the high level bridge to work each day, and 6.2 miles back over that high level bridge from work each day, rain or shine, at 61 years old. And it took a lot of self-talk and a lot of belief that I could go there. I could drive a tow motor again. I could adapt to this environment. I could make these transitions. And one of the major aspects I talk about in my book is the process of acclimation, adapting, adopting, and adjusting to the new climate surroundings and conditions that you will enter in society. And so teaching the book for 8 years made that information journey from my head to my heart. And what I learned to understand was that voices equal choices. The voices that speak the loudest in your heart will determine your choices. And those words in that book spoke to me. Those quotes, those statements, those principles kept coming up, and I was able to follow them. One of the most important things I've learned in life, in school, in writing my books, is that life truly is all about relationship. And if life is truly all about relationship, reintegration is all about relationship. President George W. Bush alluded to this in his State of the Union address when he was referring to the incarcerated returning to society. He said, love and a sense of purpose, it comes when a loving citizen puts their arm around a brother or sister in need and says, I love you, God loves you, and together we can perform miracles. As a result, gratitude. As a result of many people in this room and many people who are not in this room, I was not only able to succeed, but together we did perform miracles. And I'm very grateful for that today. The formula for my reentry success, I taught before I ever left because I knew what it was from prior incarcerations. The right vision, the right people, and the right principles. This first picture here is of when I met Mark Han, who's my publisher. Mark Han, who's come into my life, and he says, I'll give your book a new face and I'll get you in mainstream publishing where people can have access to your book. And he did that with no thought of reward. No thought of reward at all. Did that to help me. And it's a lot of work. And Mark has been a major support in my reintegration and in the success of what I do today. Like I said, you alone can do it, but you can't do it alone. And reintegration is all about relationship. Shortly after I met Mark, I was approached by the Ohio Department of Corrections and to discuss the opportunity of hiring me to put my program in all 40 prisons. So I had to develop a company and become an LLC and get it business license, vendor's license, a tax ID and all, and I had no clue what to do with this stuff. It was overwhelming. All I did was teach a program for 8 years and I focused on changing lives. Now I had to learn all these other aspects. But one of the things I teach men that are incarcerated is when you leave prison, you will be faced with an overwhelming amount of challenges because you're rebuilding your life. Many of those challenges you will call problems, but they're not really problems. They're just challenges unwelcome. You only call them challenges because they blindside you. You didn't invite them and they evoke emotions you'd rather not deal with. But the thing about those things you call problems as well as the challenges, they offering you the opportunity to be stretched and become more than what you were. So when you face greater challenges in life, you will be able to meet them as well. So it's important to understand that when you leave prison, you will face the same challenges the 1,600 people who are released that same day throughout the United States are facing. The motto is, my challenges are average. So after meeting with the DRC, my book team started to grow very much. The first person from right to left is my mentor of 16 years, who first asked me to write the book and was a tremendous father figure in my life. And Ben Soroka, who's been a huge support in my reintegration and in the success of what I do today. And of course, myself, and again, Mark Hanus. And as you can see by the looks on our faces, the meeting with the DRC went very well. Again, this Ben Soroka and me at the book launch. Barely 6 months after my release, Mark Hanus organized a book launch at Toledo University, sponsored by and attended by many of the legal powers of Lucas County. That's where they featured a PBS documentary that was done on my program and is now seen nationwide due to the amount of lives it has impacted in a positive way. In fact, I wanted to tell I call them my team. I wanted to tell them, and I might as well tell all of you, I got a call last night from Idaho prison, a female prison. We seen your PBS documentary and we were overwhelmed. We want you to fly out here and teach us how to teach this program. And another amazing thing happened to me Sunday. I was at church and our head pastor had come to visit me in prison before. And after 4 years of seminary and being indoctrinated into the Department of Corrections, he said, I see no reason why you cannot become the associate pastor here. We'll have to have a meeting with the elders to finalize it, and then you'll get up in front of the church and tell your story. And I'm looking to open another door that this prison ministry can start in this church, because every time somebody comes into the church and they got out of prison, he's like, Larry, come here. So yesterday I ate dinner at Clint Longnecker's house. Wonderful people. I went to church the morning before that and offered to be an associate pastor. And then I get a call in the evening about flying to Idaho. You know, one of the main things, and Clint often talked to me about this, and he's dead on. One of the most important things men need when they come out of prison is purpose, but everybody needs purpose. It doesn't matter if you just came out of incarceration. Meaning and purpose in life is central for people to stay focused and to move forward and pull the best that's in us out. Because I believe every human being, most of them that I've taught, wanted to change. They just didn't know what they didn't know. They were maladaptive. Is there truly evil people in prison? Absolutely. There's evil people in society. But most people are maladaptive and they just don't know. And I didn't know. And I had to address the issues that I didn't know. And then after I grew, I was able to share that information with others. Try to get through this. That's also pictures of the book launch. And in my book, I say there's only 3 things you can represent your community when you return home: predator, parasite, or partner. I don't use politically correct terms because they're too easy to live with. Convict, inmate, ex-felon, and sometimes they use it as a badge of honor. But when you have to look at yourself and say, I'm behind this reservoir because my crime specifically defined me as a predator, my actions as a predator, not the person. My actions specifically defined me as a parasite. And then what's it mean to be truly a partner with society? I went from being a predator to a partner with society because I realized nothing in my life was going to change until I do. And for the legal system here in Toledo to accept me as their partner in reducing crime in Lucas County was an overwhelming honor and privilege, and an inspiring way to feel welcome back into society by being their partner in this work of labor of necessity that we do in reducing crime. One point I was contacted by a community treatment facility next to the prison over here, Toledo Correctional Institute, and they offered to hire me to train their staff to teach my program and help reduce recidivism. So that's me carrying the books into the facility. And the second picture is me training their staff. But I want to share with you what's really overwhelming about this circumstance. When I first pulled into that parking lot, I looked at that fence line at that Toledo prison where I stood at 45 years old and looked out 16 years earlier, wondering what could ever possibly become of my life at 61 years old with the amount of prison time I had behind me. And at that age, I had no clue of the wonderful things that would unfold in my life just next door 16 years later. One of the most important things I want to say is that about this one too is the most important thing is the poorest person leaving prison is not the person without a nickel. They learned that in my course. The poorest person leaving prison is the person without a vision for a better life. And so what they learn to understand is you create the vision, and then over time, the vision will create you. And that's what's happened in my life. That vision I had at that fence line, Toledo Correctional Institute, where I began that work on that book, and direction of my life change was immediate when I went in this fourth time. And I stuck to that vision. And today it's manifested by the help of other people. I would like to conclude with sharing with you the code of conduct from my reentry success that I share with other people today. I will value the rights and freedoms of others in society. I will fulfill my duties and responsibilities in every area of my life. I will focus my life on family and community. I will live my life trustworthy in my manhood. I will base my decisions and actions on how they affect everyone. I will cherish and protect the gifts of freedom and liberty. I will give more than I take. I will develop habits that free me from old labels and limits. I will keep myself free from addictive and destructive habits. And I will seek to discover and develop my talents for the benefit of everyone. I would like to thank you for this opportunity. It's been a privilege and honor to be up here. Thank you very much.
We got a standing ovation. Larry, your story is very moving and very impressive. And I'd also like to not only, I mean, you're so impressive, but also the group of people that are your team are very impressive. And I mean, I really don't know what to say, how much you probably have changed his life. So it's awesome. We do have some time for some questions. So if you'd like to come up to the floor, Mike, that'd be great.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. You did a fabulous job. It was truly inspiring. I work for the Lucas County Juvenile Court in the CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocates Program. I know from the research that people in prison have suffered traumas in their childhood. And our community did a study a few years back, and it found that I think it was 96%, could be more than that if I could remember. Up to between 96 and 98% of all of the juveniles who were in our juvenile detention center had a history with Lucas County Children's Services. Does your book talk about trauma and how to heal from trauma? And what's your experience with the people in prison? Would you discuss how
Absolutely.
important trauma is?
So there's probably not much you could mention the book does not talk about. It's a 4.5-month course. There's 2 chapters on family. 85% of those incarcerated grew up without a father figure. Now that's not correlation, that's causation. So they never had healthy models. And so what we look at in these chapters is, what does a healthy family look like? What does a healthy role model look like? What happens when that father figure vacuum is created? It opens the door for trauma. That is trauma in and of itself. And so what often happens is boyfriends and other people come in with the mother, and there's different forms of abuse. I looked at a study I talk about in my second book. They did one of the colleges did, I can't remember the name of it. One of the colleges did a study of 27 people on death row in Ohio, and 17 of them suffered from severe childhood trauma and abuse. And the important thing I want to say is, I say in the book, I don't pull no punches because I'm talking to men with some calloused hearts. Excuses are for cowards and children, but there are precipitating and mitigating factors. You need to understand where you come from, but mostly you need to know what it's like to go forward. So yes, we take a look at the fact that when dealing with family system, that mother has to give up her role and take on a dual role as a parent. She has to give up her own life journey of becoming, relating, and achieving. The first child takes on the role of the adult parent, and each child takes on a different role there. And so this family is now living in survival rather than growth. And their natural process of growth and develop is interrupted. So if I can help these men learn to understand that, and people have often said that I need to write an example of this book for adolescent, that type of thing. It's been said by people it needs to be in every school. What I do is I move people. So as a person that's depth studying the field of neuroscience, there's 2 things that are essential for life: survival and growth. Those are 2 basic essentials. The problem is you can become hardwired to live in either one of those states of being. So survival, we could look at the fight or flight response. When that fight or flight response from trauma gets turned on, and it doesn't get turned off because repetitive traumas or traumas that aren't dealt with, this person becomes hardwired in a state of survival. So if you can imagine what the fight or flight response is like, you walk out the door here and a dog jumps at you, you didn't know it. You know that feeling you get, that moment, your mind goes blank, you can't remember your phone number, your last name for about 10 seconds. Well, these people live in that state, and they suffer from what I call underlearning, the inability to learn new things. It doesn't stick. So how do I get this person from a state of survival and eclipse it with a state of growth? I believe every human being is wired for love. I think the science proves it. When you love your wife or your children, or you have that feeling towards them, do you know that your immune system strengthens in that very moment? Your brain sharpens. You actually add to the longevity of your life. The things that go on you on a neurochemical response from a response of love first does what it does to you before you feel it towards them. And the same is true of survival, tragically enough.
Any more questions? No. Again, Clint?
What collectively do we do to find this initiative for the coordinate
For those of you on Zoom, the question was, what can we as a community and Rotarians do collectively to help with reentry?
So let me begin with those who really don't have the time to invest a lot, invest a lot in this. You know, it can begin with simple things like donations to the Cherry Street Mission. If you have a men's church group, you can go to the mission in places like this and have a Bible study with these men, showing up over there and seeing that they matter. Learning to understand what I say about my book is this. It's not just for people returning from prison. It's for helping people to understand what those who are going through returning from prison. If you have a family member or a friend who's had somebody, 1 in 4 people have had somebody either incarcerated in their family or knew someone who was incarcerated at some point. And so to get the information out there, like is in my books, like Judge O'Hari said, you know, the first 8 years when my book was completed, I didn't do those things for money. They said, how much money do you want? I said, I don't want any money. They said, well, you deserve some money. You wrote the book. I said, I don't want to be accused by the system or anybody for doing this for profit and having a gimmick. And I want to protect myself from that greed. So I want to do this for free. So even today, my goal is getting this information out there, understanding what people are going through so they can help understand what the things that people are facing. Attend a First Wednesday meeting down here if you have a time sometime and see what these people have to offer and ask what you could possibly do. Or maybe you'll see a place that your business or your men's group or your community or your family could do to make a difference. Because I want you to really know that these men want to succeed. They do. Most overwhelmingly, they want to succeed. And while I wouldn't want them in my home or in my neighborhood until they learn some of the things they need to learn, that doesn't mean that every one of those human beings does not have something wonderful and to offer human life. You know, we all come into this world with something that you can do alone that no other human being could possibly do. I use myself as an example. I said, anybody could have wrote that book on those 2 books on reintegration, but they couldn't have written my book the way I wrote it. So if I didn't do it, it would have never got done. And the people that were touched would have never got touched. So what do you have in your life that you could possibly reach out and make a difference about? What more could you learn about this huge thing about people coming back from prison to make a difference and help make your community safer? Thank you.
Larry, just not from the last one, but one, congratulations on coming here today and putting together the presentation and for all the work that you've done already. What you're doing now is truly amazing. I actually happen to be blessed and know a couple of members of your team, call them longtime friends, didn't know they were coming here today with you. But what you're doing, I would guess, inspired everybody in this room. And you've got a lot of people, we have pretty good jobs here, do a lot of different things in the community, but the speech that you gave today, you know, opened our eyes to different things, made us think about things. My guess is, and people in this room have gone through probably terrible things. You have gone through something, I think, that no one in this room went through. And, you know, that will continue to make changes and change lives. Whether you decide to write another book, whether you decide to go around Ohio speaking, whether you decide to go around the country speaking, you have the chance to do those things. Don't feel bad about getting paid for it. Don't need to make an obscene amount of money, but you can make money do it. And one thing you would do by doing that is you'll have the chance to change even more lives. You've started something really good. And I think you'll be amazed. And maybe everybody in this room, what you do in the next 5 to 10 years, making a huge impact.
Thank you for that. Again, you have no idea of April 8th will be 1 year to have that said to me. how important that is to me. But another thing that has happened is Ashland University looked at the curriculum and they are considering the possibility of making it Ashland University curriculum. And they work a lot in prisons. So they're going to Congress about the second chance grants. And they're going to use my book as part of that approach. And they've considered asking me to go to Congress and speak for them on this issue. And so there are a lot of doors opening, and my goal is just spending the rest of my life making a difference in the lives of other people. Thank you.
On behalf of the Toledo Rotary, I'd like to give you this, or we'd like to give you this book, Historical Tales of Toledo, written by past President Clint Mock, and we'll be making a donation in your name to the Polio Plus Fund. So thank you. All right.
Sure. There was a Toledo Blade article written about what I'm doing. If anybody would like to have a copy of it, there's some laying up here. Thank you.
As a reminder, we will not be meeting next Monday in honor of Easter. We hope you will join us on April 17th back here at the Glass City Center, when we'll have Amanda Held from the Hooves organization, who will speak to us about veterans and horse therapy and how it changes those with traumatic stress disorder. There's no afternoon committees today. And so with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for joining us, and happy Easter.